I traveled back to the day he confessed to me, only to realize I was just a minor canon Fodder character in a book. The reason for this was that before our wedding, I accidentally discovered his Weibo alt account. It was filled with his unrequited love for the female lead. The most recent post read, "I'm getting married. If it's not you in the end, then anyone else doesn't matter." Welcome to Audio Love Tales. It's time for our story. While taking a break from writing wedding invitations, I scrolled through his Weibo alt account, which was filled with records of his unrequited love for another woman. How did I confirm it was him? It was because of the photo accompanying the latest Weibo post. "I'm getting married. If it's not you in the end, then it doesn't matter who it is." The photo was probably taken standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling window, capturing the night view. Faintly revealed in the deep blue night, the clean glass reflected his slender figure. If that wasn't enough to confirm, then the Space Traveler building blocks, also reflected on the table behind him, made it impossible for me to deceive myself. I had personally assembled that. The Weibo post's timestamp showed a day half a year ago, a very ordinary sunny day, my birthday, when he proposed to me. Actually, I had already guessed he was going to propose before that. Once, while tidying up things at home, I saw that plain ring placed in a velvet box. The ring's style was very simple, with no embellishments except for an intertwined design on the lines. On the day of the proposal, the waiter pushed the cake over. After he lit the candles, he told me to make a wish. I closed my eyes and remained quiet for a minute before opening them again, only to see him holding a bouquet of roses and presenting the ring. But perhaps because I had anticipated it, when I faced such a scene, I wasn't actually very excited. I just smiled and nodded when he earnestly asked if I was willing to marry him, then extended my finger, only to pause the moment I was about to accept the ring. It wasn't the plain ring I had seen that day. Later, on the way back, I caressed the diamond ring on my finger and finally couldn't resist turning my head to ask him, "Did you change the ring?" He was focused on driving at the time, the night light casting shadows on his handsome profile, as dashing as when we first met. Hearing my question, he subtly furrowed his brow, then glanced at me and chuckled softly. "This is a ring I carefully selected for a long time. There's only this one." How could I have changed it? I raised my hand and looked at the diamond, sparkling brilliantly under the lights. The words came to my lips but were ultimately swallowed back down. This ring, a brand new model launched only half a month ago, how long could he have carefully selected it? The car stopped at the entrance of the residential complex. After he dropped me off at home, he said he had something to do at the company and had to go back. He kissed my forehead, softly said, "Happy birthday," and then left. I went to the study, and according to my memory, pulled out the third drawer from the bottom on the right side of the bookshelf. Besides a few unopened fountain pens lying quietly inside, there was nothing else. The plain ring was gone. I couldn't help but suspect that my memory was flawed, but I clearly remembered the appearance of that plain ring. Just as I maintained a half-crouched posture for an unknown amount of time, the ringing of my phone suddenly brought my thoughts back. It was Sumoing calling. After answering, there was silence on the other end. My soft voice called out to him, "Mowing?" After a long while, his cool, deep voice came through the screen, "I'm getting married." I was stunned, then smiled and corrected him, "We are getting married." He also laughed, his laughter seemingly mixed with a hint of sadness. "Yes, we are getting married." Because of this phone call, my attention was diverted. I closed the drawer and stood up to go to the bedroom. On the phone, he said, "Manman, talk to me, I want to hear your voice." I don't know if this counts as a little intimacy between us. Every time he worked overtime, he would call and ask me to talk to him for a while. According to him, just hearing my voice made him not tired. I thought he loved me. Then I saw an earlier Weibo post. "Today, driving past a wedding dress shop, I suddenly thought of you. You would definitely be the most beautiful bride in a wedding dress." I remembered the day we later chose wedding dresses. He looked at me, dressed in wedding dresses, and repeatedly lost himself in thought. Perhaps at that moment, I should have asked him, "Who are you seeing through me?" Unfortunately, deeply immersed in happiness, I only thought he was too tired from just finishing a project, and I even felt sorry for him giving up his rest time to accompany me to choose wedding dresses. I tried on one dress after another, asking him which one looked better. He stroked my face and said that as long as I wore it, they all looked beautiful, telling me to decide for myself. Below this Weibo post was a comment, posted by himself, dated the day after we chose the wedding dress. Her name is Song Man, my future wife. She also looks beautiful in a wedding dress. I suddenly felt a bit breathless, my chest aching. I stood up and with trembling fingers opened the window. In an instant, the red wedding invitations were blown away, scattered all over the floor. Having no mind to pick them up, I held my phone and continued to scroll to the next Weibo post. If he's not good to you, could you turn around and look at me? In my memory, this seemed to be the first time I had seen him speak in such a humble tone. At any other time, he always exuded an aura of a superior. Even when admitting defeat, he was never humble. I remembered our first date after we got together. We had agreed to watch a new movie together, but I waited at the cinema entrance until the movie ended before he leisurely arrived late. During that time, his phone had been unreachable. Later, he explained that there was a sudden urgent meeting, and he had momentarily forgot about accompanying me to the movie and hadn't seen his phone. Rationally, I shouldn't have been angry, but emotionally, I couldn't control myself. He hugged me, kissed me lightly, and apologized again. He took me to eat, to buy clothes, but seeing that I remained uninterested, his patience seemed to run out. Just as I had changed out of a long dress, he suddenly held my cheeks, his tone calm yet brooking no refusal. Song Man, forgive me. After that, he was never late for a date again. In fact, every word and action when he was with me was impeccable, thus cutting off any possibility of me getting angry and demanding that he coax me. Before, I thought he was like this because he loved me. Now I realize that the reason he could do so well was because he didn't love me. I recall my first encounter with Su Moing. It was at 2:30 a.m. in the hospital. He was a patient suffering from stomach cramps due to drinking, and I was the doctor treating him. During the ward rounds, I saw that even in a coma, his brows were still tightly furrowed. I instinctively leaned down and gently called his name, Su Moing. Almost in the very next second, he suddenly relaxed, then reached out and grabbed my sleeve, murmuring in a very low voice, "Don't go." He was very handsome, with a distinct jawline, deep-set eyes, a prominent nose, and long, thick eyelashes casting a shadow on his pale face, making him appear fragile and aloof. Actually, before meeting him, I had already heard the name Su Moing. It was from my mother, who only mentioned that her friend's son was named Su Moing, handsome in appearance, outstanding in ability, yet he had never dated because of a woman and had a very unpleasant relationship with his family. Pausing to gaze at him for a long time, I suddenly became a little curious about what kind of woman could make this favored son of heaven so stubbornly devoted. I met Su Moing again half a month later at a mutual friend's birthday party. At that time, for some unknown reason, as I arrived late due to a surgery, apologizing while pushing the door open, Su Moing, who was being urged to drink, suddenly turned his head, causing a group of people around him to look at me. The atmosphere was slightly awkward, and he chuckled softly. "Let me introduce you, my lifesaver, Song Man, Dr. Song." My halted heartbeat slowly resumed, and at the same time a peculiar emotion surged within me. He remembered me. From then on, our paths inexplicably crossed more often. Undeniably, I was indeed moved by him. Not to mention those years of unilaterally knowing him due to my mother's constant mentions, even our first meeting at the hospital showed he had the capital to be liked. After a period of ambiguity, he confessed. I remember it was raining heavily that day. My car broke down on the way home from work. I got out to check, but not only did I find nothing, I also got my clothes soaked. As the rain grew heavier and the sky darker, I hesitated for a long time before sending him a message. He arrived very quickly, got out of his car with an umbrella, helped me into his car, and then called for a tow truck. I was very disheveled that day. I even twisted my ankle when I got out of the car. He looked at me with a half-smile, then picked me up in his arms. The moment he entered the door, he suddenly lowered his head and asked me, "Song Man, do you want to try being with me?" Water droplets from his hair slid down his chin. In the quiet house, it seemed only our intertwined heartbeats could be heard. After we got together, he took me to meet his parents. They liked me very much. In fact, it was quite miraculous, because due to my mother, I had seen his parents many times, but each time I just happened to miss him. His mother held my hand and sighed with emotion. Man, Auntie thought this boy would never marry. He even made your uncle want to disown him." Fortunately, Su Moing walked over at the right moment and chuckled. "Mom, I found you a daughter-in-law, are you satisfied?" Now, recalling those words feels like a slap across my face. He didn't love me. He didn't love me. But he could look at everyone, then calmly and clearly watch me fall deeper and deeper for him, bit by bit. The bits and pieces recorded on Weibo were all his unspoken love. It turned out he had never let her go from beginning to end. The crystal cabinet reflected my pale face, and I suddenly wanted to know if I looked like that girl, and if there was even a slight possibility that he was looking for her shadow in me. Very quickly, I flipped to a photo. It was a group photo, but Sue Moing was not in it. He must have been the one taking the picture. In the photo, a very petite girl stood in front of several boys. She had fair skin and big eyes, making people feel a strong desire to protect her. This was probably the person Sue Moing could never forget. Originally, I felt lucky that, apart from both having fair skin, I didn't look like her at all. From appearance to temperament, we were completely different. At least he wasn't using me as a substitute. But only later did I realize that I was still wrong. "I heard he proposed to you? Congratulations." The day that Weibo post was made, Sumo Ting was brought back by his assistant in a drunken state. When I helped him, the strong smell of alcohol made my head spin a little. After finally helping him onto the sofa, he hugged me tightly, refusing to let go, burying his head in my neck and gently rubbing, calling my name repeatedly. Man, the hand that was originally around my waist had, at some point, moved to my shoulder, and our clothes became disheveled in the struggle. By the time I reacted, he had already carried me to the bed. I lay beneath him, trembling slightly. He caressed my waist, his voice hoarse with a hint of drunkenness, chuckling, "What are you afraid of?" My heart ached dully. At that moment, I suddenly didn't know who he was thinking of that night, and in my every day of loving him, had there ever been a single second when he loved me? I thought, probably not. If he could enter the entertainment industry, he would definitely win Best Actor. After all, when it came to loving me, his acting was flawless. Or perhaps it was because I loved him, so I would constantly find excuses for him, rationalizing all his flaws. I didn't know which reason it was, because ever since then, Sumo Ting indeed showed more and more affection for me. When he was free, he liked to cling to me, and even when I went to work, he would use the excuse of being sick to call me and come see me. During that period, he would often stare at me in a daze, occasionally gently tracing my features in the middle of the night. Once I was woken up by him and found him stroking the corner of my eye, his gaze heavy as he looked at me. Sleepily, I asked him, confused, not sleeping yet, not sleepy. He stretched out his hand and pulled me into his embrace, his voice slightly hoarse as he said, "I had a nightmare." "What scary thing did you dream of? A tiger? A big lion? I dreamed you married someone else." You see, this person, while speaking sweet nothings to me and acting as if he loved me deeply, was simultaneously unable to forget another woman. The names printed together on the scattered wedding invitations now seemed incredibly dazzling. The gauze curtain fluttered, and outside the window, heavy rain poured down. Some rainwater was carried in by the wind, landing on the invitations and blurring the writing. I actually don't really like summer rain. When I was little, my parents often worked overtime for a period, and I encountered many nights of lightning and thunder alone at home, leaving me with a trauma and a fear of thunder. After being with Sumo Ting, every time there was a thunderstorm at night, he would hug me and gently pat my back to comfort me. Now, I could be considered not as terrified of it. But upon seeing the next Weibo post, for a moment I felt his comfort would become my second trauma. "Tonight there's thunder, she's afraid of thunder just like you." So, in that moment he gently comforted me. Was he thinking of me or of her? The time of this Weibo post was probably in the summer of the year we had just started living together. When I was on vacation at home, it happened that he had to work overtime. That night, there was a very heavy downpour, accompanied by rumbling thunder, causing a malfunction in the nearby power lines and a blackout. In the chaotic sound of the storm and the complete darkness, I curled up in the corner of the room for a long time, until he came home and used his phone's flashlight to find my location, calling my name in a gentle voice. Although in the faint light of the phone, I couldn't clearly see his figure, that in no way affected his towering image in my heart the moment he appeared. He gently helped me onto the bed, then with one hand removed the suit that had been soaked by the rain and tossed it aside. After that, he pulled me into his embrace, his slender fingers resting on the back of my head, and spoke in a very soft voice. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Later, whenever a thunderstorm occurred, he would quickly wrap me in his arms the moment lightning appeared. One time, his friends came over to visit, and seeing him suddenly pull me into his embrace and cover my ears, they laughed and teased. "Hey, Sue Moshin, do you really have to be so showy? Dr. Song isn't a child, is she afraid of thunder?" My face flushed in waves at the time, and I lowered my head, clutching the corner of his shirt, and spoke shyly. Then, from the top of my head, I heard his soft chuckle. "Why isn't my Dr. Song a child?" The consequence of this incident was that for a long time afterward, he liked to call me little friend, saying things like, "Little friend, come here for a hug," and "Little friend, what do you want to eat today?" His friends referred to me as Mr. Sue's little friend. In fact, I wasn't very familiar with his friends. The first time I accompanied him to a gathering, his friends were all very surprised to see me. Sue Moshin just smiled and said nothing, only holding my hand and sitting to one side. Later, the microphone somehow ended up in my hand. Amidst the clamor, Sue Moshin leaned close and asked, "Can you sing?" "A little." "Then just sing." Long time no see. Because it had been too long since I'd sung, I had a bit of trouble finding the right pitch at first, but after 2 lines, I got into the rhythm. When I finished singing and turned my face to look at him, I realized he was staring at me, and the surroundings were completely silent. He softly said, "That was truly beautiful." If I had looked at him more carefully at that moment, I probably would have realized that those words weren't directed at me. 3 months after Su Mo Ting and I got together, it was his birthday. At that time, I thought for a long time about what I should give him, and later felt that given his status, he probably didn't lack anything. So, I decided to personally assemble a space traveler model made of building blocks as a gift. The assembly process was not smooth. It was my first time playing with this kind of building blocks, and I couldn't even understand the blueprint very well at first. Later, after staying up several nights, I finally almost finished it, only to accidentally drop it on the floor. Almost the moment it hit the ground, it completely fell apart. I remember very clearly that Su Mo Ting was on the phone with me at the time. Hearing my gasp, he anxiously asked what was wrong. I stared at the building blocks scattered all over the floor, silent for a moment, then sighed. "The cup broke." He steadied his breath. "Then buy another one. I just like this one. If it broke, it means it doesn't belong to you." The next day, he had someone deliver a very exquisite set of teacups to me. I spent a few more evenings reassembling the building blocks. On his birthday, we went out for dinner together. After getting out of the car, he held my hand and walked into the restaurant he had booked. But at the moment we entered, he suddenly stopped and let go of my hand. I instinctively looked up at him, then followed his gaze towards the glass wall outside. Besides the passing cars and various pedestrians, nothing special was happening. I took his hand again and asked what was wrong. He then came back to his senses, looked down at me and said, "Nothing, just saw, friend." I truly believed him and even asked if he needed to go say hello, but he said, "Forget it." At that time, I only felt that his tone when he said "forget it" was a bit melancholic and lost, and I didn't understand the deeper meaning until I saw this Weibo post. "Saw you at the restaurant today, but your eyes were always on him." That's why his mood clearly dropped during dinner later. His smile was perfunctory, and even when I gave him the gift, he just casually glanced at it, said, "I really like it," and then put it aside. So much so that a week later, I found the gift still in the corner of his car trunk, unopened and unused. He probably really forgot. A trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. After a long while, he apologized to me, then placed the space traveler model on his office desk. At that time, I thought he was busy, which was why he forgot. Now I understand the reason he forgot was because he didn't care. My vision blurred and water droplets hit the screen. My chest ached, so much so that I almost needed all my strength to resist. After a moment of relief, I quietly continued to scroll down. "Sick, met you." This was posted when we had just been together for 2 months. That day, he had a fever, and I took care of him all night at the hospital. I rarely saw him in such a vulnerable state. That was probably the first and only time. He was burning up, lying in the hospital bed, unable to sleep soundly, constantly muttering softly. I leaned closer and listened for a while, only vaguely hearing a few phrases. "Why wasn't it me? Don't go. Don't go." I held his hand and gently told him, "I'm here with you, not going anywhere." Throughout the entire night, I sat by his side and didn't leave for a single step. The next day, my arm was numb for a long time. It was also from that day onwards that every time he worked overtime, he would call me, saying he wanted to hear me talk. I believed it to be true. Actually, I've also wondered why, on that first night we met, the moment I called his name, he immediately relaxed. After we got together, I once mentioned this to him. At that time, a light rain was pattering outside the window. We were curled up on the sofa watching a movie. He held me in his arms, and in my ear was the strong beat of his heart. After a long while, he chuckled softly. Perhaps this is a fated connection. I thought he must have been very tired, trying so hard to pretend to love me. A momentary ringing appeared in my ears, and the sharp pain in my heart continuously intensified. I lowered my eyes to look at the screen, my fingertip paused on the last Weibo post. Today at the gathering, I met a girl. Before I could see her face clearly, I almost thought it was you. Later, I found out it was just that her voice was similar to yours. In medicine, there's a term called broken heart syndrome, which is a condition similar to a heart attack caused by continuous constriction of blood vessels, but the heart doesn't actually break, it just feels as if it's breaking. When I saw his Weibo, I truly thought I would die that night. A wave of real and terrifying pain spread from my heart, so I trembled uncontrollably, gasped for air, and my tear ducts seemed to lose control. But fortunately, I waited until the sun rose the next day. I sat in the quiet study all night, watching the rain stop and the wind subside, watching the sunlight slowly creep in and fall on me, and then I belatedly remembered a very small thing. That was when he and I had just started dating. Not long after, we went hiking together to watch the sunrise. The wait for the sunrise was very long, and we sat side by side on the mountaintop, chatting about some very ordinary things. Most of the time, I was the one talking, and he would slightly turn his face to look at me, listening intently. Later, I don't know how, but I leaned on his shoulder and fell asleep. When the first ray of sunlight came, he gently called my name. At that time, when I opened my eyes, there was not only light, but also him. Later, a friend who was with us took a picture of him and me sitting side by side. In the picture, I was pointing at a distant mountain and saying something, while Sumoing tilted his head, looking at me gently and attentively. It was quite far away, and the picture quality wasn't clear, but it was very beautiful. Because of that, I developed the habit of recording pictures of him and me together at any time. We were together for 5 years, and my phone saved over 8,000 photos of us together. Those ordinary days became special because of his presence. Among those 8,000 plus photos, there were pictures of us making dumplings together, watching movies together, and him driving, as well as our chat history. I told him that in the future, we would print out these photos, so that when we were old, we could lie in the sun, leaning on chairs, slowly flipping through these memories. I had more than once fantasized about the scene of standing with him in a wedding dress and exchanging vows. I also remembered the video I meticulously edited a selection of photos for a few nights ago, and suddenly everything felt ridiculous. I would never have thought back then that the photos accumulated over 5 years could be completely deleted in just 2 minutes. Watching the number of deleting items slowly increase, I remembered a friend who, probably sincerely wishing me happiness, smiled and told me, "Zio man, do you know that every time you mention the name Sumoing or look at him, your eyes sparkle?" That was probably because I loved him very much. If I hadn't discovered his Weibo alt account, I think I would have gone down the normal path of marriage and having children with him. After all, in everyone's eyes, including mine, he also loved me very much. In the winter of our second year together, I followed a medical team to support a mountainous area. The time wasn't long, probably about a month. When I returned, it would be close to the Lunar New Year, and I had already planned to go set off fireworks with him. Originally, everything was going smoothly. But a few days before returning, while helping to search for a lost child, I rolled down a hillside and directly fainted. When I woke up again, I saw a somewhat disheveled Sumoing. Later, I heard that when I was unconscious, he was so anxious that his eyes turned red, and he didn't sleep for several nights. Fortunately, besides a broken leg from being thrown and falling, all other injuries were just scrapes. During that period, Sumo Ting stayed with me every day at the hospital, treating me like a fragile glass doll. He acted so well that my colleagues often said enviously, "Song man, your luck is really too good." Yes, my luck was really too good. Sumo Ting was handsome, rich, and gentle, and most importantly, he loved me. But he had never said he loved me. As past events surfaced bit by bit in my mind, moments that I couldn't remember clearly before, once linked to the content of his Weibo posts, could be perfectly matched with his distracted state and wandering gaze when we were together at that time. Sumo Ting was still away on a business trip. He said he wanted to take care of some things first so that after we got married, we could have more time for our honeymoon. So, recently, we had been communicating solely by phone. Originally, I didn't know how I was supposed to calmly face him during video calls, but then I realized I had worried too much because he hadn't contacted me for 3 days. I started to have trouble sleeping every night. Even if I did fall asleep, I would dreaming of myself breaking down and crying hysterically when I confronted Sumo Ting, a chaotic scene. When I woke up, my whole body ached. I couldn't see a knife, but I could feel the pain from the inside out. The year I first started working, I met a girl. When she was admitted to the hospital, she was already in a state of shock, her eyes filled with intertwined tears, her whole body radiating her pain. She had taken nearly a bottle of sleeping pills. Later, after she was rescued and hospitalized, I learned that her suicide attempt was because she discovered her fiancé had cheated on her with his ex-girlfriend. At that time, there were only 3 days left until their wedding. After she regained consciousness, that girl would often stare blankly out the window or curl up in her quilt and cry. Her friends would sometimes hug her to comfort her and sometimes angrily scold her. There was one sentence among them that I remembered for a very long time. It's better that heaven made you discover he cheated 3 days before the wedding, rather than after you got married. It's saving you, don't you know? For a long time after that, I wondered if I ever encountered such a situation in the future, would I be like her? I couldn't be. I don't know how long this state of nightmares, insomnia, and endless repetition lasted until I had a strange dream. In the dream, I stood from a bystander's perspective, clearly seeing our story, or rather, their story. That girl was named Zia Feng. It was a world centered around her. Many people liked her. Sumo Ting and she met during a university club's hiking event. At that time, he was a handsome sophomore senior, and she was a beautiful freshman junior. Similar interests, similar dining preferences. No matter who looked, the two were a couple. Unfortunately, Zia Feng loved Sumo Ting's classmate, the male lead of the story. And my name only appeared once at the very end. Sumo Ting eventually married a wife, a doctor named Song Man. Therefore, every one of his Weibo posts would become a source of regret for the bystander. I don't know what this dream meant. Perhaps it just meant that I was not Sumo Ting's female lead, and he was not Zia Feng's male lead. If liking the female lead was his character setting, then was the character setting truly so strong that it couldn't be shaken. Sumo Ting had a friend whom I had met at a gathering once, and I also knew the girlfriend who came with him. Later, we were invited to their wedding. It was at the wedding that I learned these two were childhood sweethearts. They had been together since graduating high school, their long-term relationship lasting until today. It was clear they loved each other very much, especially when they exchanged rings, the love in the groom's eyes almost overflowing. Yet, in the story, he was actually one of the many boys who liked Zia Feng, even a supporting character with more screen time than Sumo Ting. If the setting couldn't be violated, why didn't he love Zia Feng? Ultimately, it was simply because he didn't love her. In reality, I also don't know what the name of Sumo Ting's beloved was. I have never heard or seen it anywhere. Zia Feng is merely a name that appeared in my dream. I don't know if the various things in my dream were a story I deduced due to excessive sorrow, or if we truly are just a bunch of characters preset in a book. But none of that matters. What matters is that free will exists. Sumo Ting returned on the same day I happened to be seeing a friend off at the airport. At that time, the twilight was gradually fading. The moment I turned around, I saw him, and the woman beside him who was holding his arm. He had his back to me, but 5 years of living together had long since made it possible for me to recognize him just by his silhouette. As for the woman beside him, even though I couldn't see her face, I was certain it was her. My phone held the message he had sent last night, a concise note about when he would arrive next time, but the truth was he had lied to me, returning a day earlier. By the time I reacted, I had already driven my car to follow them to the vicinity of a hotel. Across the street, I watched them walk inside. Neon lights lit up one by one, the hands of the clock turned round, and I took out my phone to dial his number. The moment it connected, I was truly terrified, so afraid that a woman's voice would answer on the other end. Fortunately, it was Sumo Ting's voice. I don't know why, but when he called out "Manman," tears involuntarily streamed down my face. Perhaps it was grievance or heartache. In short, all sorts of complex emotions made my voice ache so much in that instant that I couldn't open my mouth. "Manman," he called out again, as if uncertain. I parted my lips, just about to speak, when a faint gasp came from the other end. Immediately after, Sumo Ting said in a hurried tone, "Let's talk about whatever it is when I get back tomorrow. I currently have a meeting. Wait for me to return." It was truly difficult for him not to hang up on me the moment he heard that gasp. However, it was also in that second of his pause that I suddenly felt everything dissipate. Nothing mattered anymore. All those nights I had spent sleepless and weeping because of him, he had been by another woman's side. I sat in the car from dusk till dawn, then drove back, not to retrieve things, but to return them. The things placed in that house were all unimportant. Just like Sumo Ting, they could be discarded. After leaving behind a ring and a photograph, I left the house as if going to work as usual. The ring was the one he used when he proposed. The photograph was their silhouettes entering the hotel together. On it, I left 3 words: "Waiting for the wind." This was his Weibo alt account's nickname. I took a week off from the hospital, went bungee jumping, skydiving, mountain climbing, and did many extreme sports I had never dared to do before. Actually, after seeing countless partings of life and death as a doctor, I hadn't become indifferent to life and death. On the contrary, I was particularly afraid of dying. These activities that I once felt would be life-threatening, now after experiencing them, I felt they weren't so terrifying after all. After my vacation ended, the first person I saw back at the hospital was Sumo Ting. He was leaning against a car, dressed in a black trench coat, looking much thinner. His messy hair was blown by the wind, and an unlit cigarette WAS Chinese letter between his fingers. This was the first time I had seen him smoke. He walked towards me, his gaze so intense it couldn't dissipate, and said in a hoarse voice, "Manman?" I slightly raised my head and looked at him calmly. He probably wanted to explain, but in the face of so much evidence, he didn't know how to explain, so he opened his mouth with difficulty. She had an argument with her boyfriend, secretly ran out, and lost her ID and phone. She just happened to run into me. I used to like her, but Sumo Ting don't explain. It doesn't matter anymore. His face instantly turned pale. He reached out to grab my shoulder, but I dodged him. After that, he frequently came to find me. Sometimes he would quietly stand outside the hospital. Sometimes he would calmly sit inside the hospital. I went about my usual work and commute, not deliberately avoiding him, nor running away from him. The turning point happened during an incident where a patient's family caused trouble. At that time, I had just finished a 6-hour surgery, and, encountering the disruptive family, I was completely defenseless. I could only watch helplessly as they charged at me, throwing things at me. Later, Sumoing rushed over to protect me, and as a result, his temple was hit, leaving a wound that bled a little. When I was applying medicine for him, he suddenly grabbed my hand and said hoarsely, Man, I love you." The sudden confession did make me slightly stunned. I had never heard him say these words before, and now I wasn't very keen on hearing them. But he probably felt there was hope, so he ran to the hospital even more diligently. However, just a few days later, he suddenly stopped coming. Instead, it was, "Hello, I'm Zia Feng, are you Songman? I know you." After the woman in front of me introduced herself, she said that Sumoing was sick, probably because he hadn't rested or eaten well for many days, and coupled with his head being hit, he immediately fell ill. After listening to her, I frowned in confusion. "So what does that have to do with me?" She seemed incredulous. "Aren't you his fiancé? I know you mind me, but he and I are really just friends." "I don't want you to. Didn't he tell you we broke up?" "Bro, key up," she paused for a moment before saying, "but even so, you were together. He kept calling your name while he was in a coma." "Miss Zia, you are truly kind, but I am not like you. If I won't be with him, I won't give him any more illusions." After Sumo Ting recovered from his illness, he became entangled again. I thought I had made myself clear enough, but he didn't care at all about my coldness and neglect. That day, after finishing my exhausting work, I returned to my apartment complex. The moment I opened the door, I suddenly felt someone behind me. My body stiffened, and just as I was about to turn around, a familiar voice sounded in my ear. "Don't be afraid, it's me." It was Sumo Ting. I relaxed a little. He still hadn't given up. I suddenly felt very tired. Looking at him, I asked, "Sumo Ting, what's the point? What's the point of you doing this?" "Manman, I'm so sorry," I threw the fruit I was carrying at him, interrupting his next words, deliberately ignoring the emotions that were once again welling up in my heart. I looked closely at the tears in his eyes, my own eyes uncontrollably stinging, but I still tried hard to suppress it. I needed to retain my last bit of dignity and self-respect. "Sumo Ting, I worked hard to study and work, growing into who I am today, not to be a cannon fodder for your love. I originally might have met a better person, but you insisted on barging in. From now on, whenever I encounter something happy, as long as I remember the time I spent with you, I will not be happy. You need to suffer as much as I do for it to count as an apology." Later, I didn't see him much, but I knew he often came to see me, just not appearing in front of me. One evening, he suddenly appeared and asked if I could give him one day. He wanted to take me to see a fireworks display, and after that, he would never appear in front of me again. I looked at him and smiled brightly. "Okay." The time was 2 days later. I remember he was very happy that day, so happy that his eyes were red and his fingertips trembled so much he couldn't even take out his phone. Watching his retreating figure, I turned and walked in another direction. He had lied to me for so long, it was only fair that I lied to him once. Not 3 days later, tomorrow I would depart for further studies abroad. Sitting in the waiting hall, my heart was very calm. My phone alarm rang, displaying the preset schedule. "Happy wedding." I suddenly remembered that if no accident had occurred, today would have originally been the day I married him. After deleting the alarm, I stood up under the broadcast announcement and walked forward. There was no wedding today, but I would be happy forever. I thought that from then on, my life would enter a new chapter. After experiencing the setbacks of love, I would focus on my career and surely reach the pinnacle of life. But I didn't expect to wake up and return to the day he confessed to me. It was raining heavily outside the window. I was a bit stunned, recalling the last image on the plane. I remembered that after I sat down, I scrolled through Weibo for a few minutes before being reminded to turn off my phone. I instinctively clicked on that familiar profile picture and found that he had deleted all his Weibo posts. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes to rest. Then, in a daze, I heard a ticking sound of a second hand moving from far to near. I wanted to open my eyes but couldn't. After struggling for a while, I was woken up by the noise outside the door. I stood by the window for a long time, long enough that it passed the time I had called Sumo Ting for help the last time. Then I turned and walked to the nearest hotel to the hospital. The rain was too heavy, and I wasn't planning on going home. That day, I lay in bed thinking for a long time, unable to distinguish whether I was dreaming or if the present was a dream. Would I wake up to the flight attendant announcing the plane's landing? I don't know if it's luck or misfortune, but when I woke up this morning, I was still in the hotel room. I accepted the reality of having traveled back and also extinguished the possibility of me being with Sumo Ting. I just didn't expect that his choice, when he didn't come to pick me up, was to go find Zia Feng Wan and then get into a car accident on the way, falling into a coma. Once, I passed by that hospital room and saw him lying quietly on the bed. My steps paused slightly, and a strange feeling welled up in my heart, so I pushed the door open and went in. His brows were slightly furrowed, as if in some pain, and he wore an oxygen mask. No one would have thought he would fall into a deep sleep because of that car accident. The instruments by the bed emitted a rhythmic hum in the quiet hospital room. This was a Sumo Ting who hadn't yet had the chance to hurt me. I spoke calmly, as if speaking to him, and also as if speaking to myself. "I had a nightmare, dreaming I married you. Fortunately, I woke up. I used to think that the day of the confession would be the beginning of our story, but it turned out it wasn't. It was the end of the story. From then on, I never went to see him in the hospital room again. However, once I ran into Zia Feng and that pair of childhood sweethearts in the hospital lobby. They were there to see Sumo Ting. The moment we passed each other, I noticed a ring on Zia Feng's hand, a simple plain ring with an intersecting design on the curve. Much later, at a gathering, there were mutual friends of mine and his. One of the friends seemed a bit talkative and brought up the matter of Sumo Ting and Zia Feng concerning that ring. They said that when Zia Feng was performing in a play, she lost a prop ring and Sumo Ting had to rush to buy a fake one. Unexpectedly, he bought a real one. He was truly foolishly rich. I usually go to work and get off work, and sometimes I pass by that hospital room again, but I never stop my steps anymore. Later, because of that memory, when I went to support mountainous areas with a medical team, I avoided situations that would lead to fractures. I also gained more experience in my work and even bought a lottery ticket, which was a very small prize. I don't remember the grand prize numbers. Sumo Ting has been in a deep sleep. Occasionally, I hear that his fingertips move or physiological tears flow from the corners of his eyes, but that has long ceased to be my concern. Actually, for a very long time after I returned, I kept thinking, should I seek revenge? Should I take out the grievances I suffered in that timeline on the Sumo Ting who hasn't yet had the chance to hurt me? But what after revenge? Those moments of ambiguous affection had long since dissipated into nothingness during the time of my awakening and his deep sleep. More than revenge, I hoped that from now on, I would have no further interaction with him. 3 years after I transmigrated back, I got together with a university professor. We met at a seminar on marine topics. He was gentle, refined, humorous, and interesting. He would hold me tightly on nights when the power went out, and he would tell me funny stories about his students when I was unhappy. He took me to the Marine Museum and taught me to identify various marine creatures. Being with him felt very secure and happy. As for that period of time I experienced in another dimension, as time passed, I gradually couldn't tell if it was just a dream I had while resting my head on my desk. A year later, he proposed to me. On the day I tried on wedding dresses, he used his phone to photograph me in every single dress. After returning home, he compiled a report and even made a presentation draft. Each page had a photo of me wearing a wedding dress, with notes on the pros and cons beside it, for example. This one makes Dr. Song look very elegant, but the color isn't bright enough. This one makes Dr. Song look natural and generous, but it seems a bit heavy. This one's not bad, simple, and beautiful. The concluding page still read, "Everything is based on Dr. Song's preference." He made me laugh. On our wedding day, the weather was bright and clear, with not a cloud in the sky. We exchanged rings amidst the blessings of friends and family. Half a year later, I became pregnant. While he was accompanying me for a checkup at the hospital, we ran into sumoing. I heard he had woken up a week prior. At that time, he was wearing a loose blue and white patient gown, his face pale, standing opposite us. With red-rimmed eyes, he looked at me for a long time, then finally gave a slight tug at the corner of his lips before turning away. I noticed the veins bulging on his temple and his slightly hunched silhouette. It was already dark when we left the hospital. We held hands and walked back on the thick snow, hearing creaking sounds all the way. Later, someone set off fireworks, instantly illuminating half the sky. Passers-by stopped to watch. The fireworks display lasted for a very long time. I thought my future life will also be like these fireworks. Brilliant and colorful, splendid and dazzling. Extra story, Sumo Ting people often say that Feng Shui rotates, and for over 20 years I never believed it, but now it has finally turned to me. I suffer from a very severe psychological illness. As soon as I close my eyes, every image of being with her in the past cycles through my mind, finally returning to the picture and the ring I saw on the morning of that day when I returned home. I don't know how to describe the feeling at that moment. My breathing was rapid, my chest felt tight, my head was dizzy. For a moment, I even felt that I would die suddenly from a heart beating too fast. My fingers trembled so much that I couldn't pick up that picture. Suddenly, I remembered what that phone call the night before meant. Everything in the room was quietly in its place. Even the wedding invitations, half-written, were neatly placed on the table. She didn't take anything with her, but it was very strange. I just felt that she wouldn't come back. All those teacups, clothes, and jewelry she liked, she abandoned them and she didn't need me either. I called her, only to find that all contact methods had been blacklisted. I went to the hospital to find her. Her colleague said she had taken leave. I went to find her parents. They said Song Man had gone on a business trip. For the first time, I realized how difficult it was to find someone. I started smoking, holding my phone, guarding the empty house night after night. The ticking sound of the second hand on the clock became clearer and clearer. Living a second like a year was nothing more than this. In the past few days, I made continuous mistakes at work, even suffering huge profit losses during contract signing due to lack of concentration. One evening, when I reached for coffee, I accidentally knocked over the astronaut building blocks. With a crash, they scattered all over the floor. I don't know why, but I suddenly remembered something I once said to her. If it falls, it means it doesn't belong to you. I felt this was not a good sign, so I immediately put down all my work and tried to reassemble them, but I couldn't, because a few blocks were missing, and I couldn't find them no matter what. When I saw her again at the hospital that day, I already knew we had no possibility. That crucial round that might have allowed me to win her back, she blocked all possibilities of me appearing by her side. But I didn't want to give up. I couldn't bear to. Yes, I couldn't bear to. I thought I loved her, but what made me realize it even before love was the pain, both psychological and physiological, caused by her departure, which came fiercely and intensely. If it were before, I would never have believed that I would act so shamelessly towards a woman, but facing Song Man, I was helpless. Her family was harmonious. She graduated from a prestigious university, worked at a top-tier hospital. She was beautiful, rational, gentle, strong, seemingly without any vulnerable points. Her upbringing did not allow her to act wildly, so she bore all the pain alone and then left gracefully. When she reappeared, anything I did was futile. She only needed to stand there quietly and look at me calmly, which was enough to shatter the courage I had accumulated day and night. Actually, at first, I didn't feel she was that important. I chose her because she would definitely satisfy my parents, and her voice. A friend who saw the truth once asked me, "Can you tell them apart? The two of them. Tell them apart, tell them apart." Although their voices were very similar, Zia Feng's speaking tone was light and gentle, whereas Song Man's tone was calm and cool. I had actually always been deceiving myself, thinking that I only regarded Song Man as the best candidate for a wife. But in reality, as I invested effort in her, I was unconsciously falling in love with her. After being together for more than half a year, I discovered that she had never been to an amusement park, so I set our date location at a newly opened theme park. When we arrived, she only dared to play some relatively gentle rides. No matter how much I coaxed her, she wouldn't dare to try the thrilling ones. Later, I gave up on her. When the Ferris wheel ascended to its peak, she foolishly closed her eyes and made a wish for us to be together forever, just like the heroines in idol dramas. I poked her smiling face. "You believe in this too?" She laughed, opened one eye, then closed it again and said, "I believe in you." The feeling of my heart suddenly skipping a beat made me, for the rest of that day, always unconsciously gaze at her beautiful profile. Perhaps this was the origin of my first stirrings of love, which then deepened day by day. The first time I went to see a psychologist, almost all of my friends who went with me sighed. "Mo Ting, for Zia Feng, it's really not worth it." Yes, they all thought that I had psychological problems because Zia Feng chose someone else, so when they found out the real reason was Song Man, they all felt I was crazy. They looked at me incredulously. "You and Song Man, how long have you known each other? How could you have been together for 5 years, almost getting married, and then break up because you made a mistake? Am I crazy? Perhaps." That day, Song Man agreed to go watch fireworks with me. I was very happy, truly very happy. After returning, I immediately prepared what clothes I should wear that day. The next day, after booking the restaurant, I was late for an advertisement and went on to Weibo. Actually, ever since I posted the last Weibo, I almost never clicked on it again. Looking at those lines of text, I imagined Song Man's feelings when she saw them, and then spent a few minutes deleting them all. After deleting the last one, I closed my eyes and fell onto the bed, letting hot tears stream down from the corners of my eyes. Later, I fell into a daze and slept. From far to near, a rhythmic ticking sound of a second hand came to my ears, growing louder and louder, accompanied by a gradually intensifying heartbeat. I seemed to have entered an illusory space, and scenes of me and Song Man together flashed before my eyes. She, wearing a snow-white wedding dress, asked me which one was prettier. She stayed with me all night in the hospital when I was sick. She nodded and extended her finger when she received the ring. She gently nestled in my arms during a thunderstorm. Perhaps what I deleted was not just a few lines of text, but also all the experiences Song Man and I once shared. The images rapidly rewound, until finally, when I was raising a toast in a noisy private room, I heard a clear, cold voice from behind. "Sorry, I am late." As I turned to look, I was pulled forcefully into another space. I traveled back to the day I confessed to her, but the moment I opened my eyes, I had a car accident. My body fell into a deep sleep, and I could only stay there as a soul. I was held back about 2 meters away from her, completely unable to get closer to her. That day, I saw her walk into my hospital room, calmly look at me for a long time, and then open her mouth. "I had a nightmare, dreaming of marrying you." Fortunately, I woke up. Later, I thought I was probably also trapped in a nightmare, but I never woke up. I knew no one could accept my story of time travel, so I kept silent about it. But ever since then, I developed an extreme fear of the ticking sound of the second hand. That overwhelming sense of loss made me feel suffocated. It seemed that with every second that passed, my relationship with Song Man would regress one step, and I could only powerlessly accept this regression. But in reality, on this timeline, she and I indeed didn't have much of a relationship. Otherwise, why would she never set foot in that hospital room again after that one visit to check on me? The second time I went to see the psychologist, I quickly entered a state of tension because of the ticking sound from the clock on the wall. I trembled, covered my ears with my hands, curled up in the corner, and cried uncontrollably, until the doctor had someone take the clock off the wall. He gently comforted me, but from his eyes, I could tell that my illness was probably a bit difficult to treat. Halfway through my psychotherapy, I went to learn painting. I wanted to capture those images etched in my mind onto paper, even if in everyone else's eyes, these were all things I had judged. I stayed by Song Man's side in a soul state for 3 years, watching her cure one patient after another, becoming better and better, and the number of suitors around her also continuously increased. But fortunately, she calmly and gracefully refused each and every one of them. I secretly rejoiced, couldn't help but fantasize that she didn't choose them because of me. If I could start over, if I pursued her again, would she still agree? But I had the chance to start over, yet no chance to pursue her again. Because in the summer of the 3rd year, she got together with a university professor. I carefully observed his appearance and demeanor and sadly discovered that he was not at all like me. It turned out she wasn't looking for someone of my type, nor did she only like people like me. Rather, as long as she liked him, that was enough. I watched them go from acquaintance to falling in love to getting married, envious, jealous, yet powerless to stop it. Their first date was at the university library. I scoffed. As expected of someone who only knows how to teach, even a date has to be in such a boring place. Later, I found out that on that day, their school seemed to be organizing a video shoot. In the quiet and spacious library, many people holding musical instruments stood in an orderly fashion, and he, dressed in a well-tailored suit, sat in front of a grand piano in the center of the hall. Before striking the first note, he looked up and smiled towards the railing on the second floor. In that direction, Song Man was leaning over, holding a book, watching him, only watching him. After the shoot ended, Song Man smiled faintly and said, "Not bad. Next time if there's another one, remember to call me." From her words and actions, I could see her liking and happiness. One evening, half a year after they got together, they were strolling in the park when it suddenly started to drizzle. So they hurried to a nearby pavilion to take shelter from the rain. Perhaps the hazy drizzle created just the right atmosphere. After gradually drawing closer, the two embraced tightly, as if wanting to melt each other into their bones and flesh, slowly kissing each other. Actually, as a wisp of a soul, raindrops couldn't fall on me, but at that moment, I felt as if I was drenched through and through, inside and out, only feeling cold, so cold it made one shiver, yet I had nowhere to hide. I could no longer ignore it, they would have more intimate actions. After some more time, he proposed to her. Later, I watched them choose wedding dresses, take wedding photos, write wedding invitations. The two of them personally handled every single detail, until the day of the wedding, when they officially became a married couple under everyone's witness. Husband and wife, what a beautiful word. I almost became husband and wife with her, but today, watching her in a wedding dress standing beside another man, I couldn't even get close to her. Perhaps this is what people call the wheel of fortune turns. She once endured pain alone when I didn't return. Now I, too, am enduring double the suffering in a place she cannot see. She once said that I had to suffer as much as she did to be considered sorry. When I woke up, it was half a year after her marriage. I knew I should restrain myself, but as long as I saw her, everything would collapse and fall apart. That day, when I met them at the hospital, he carefully shielded her in his arms. The deep happiness on both their faces deeply pained my eyes, but I didn't even have the right to be angry or indignant. I began a night of sleeplessness, even having a tendency to self-harm, once unable to distinguish whether it was a dream or if the present was a dream. Later, I went to see a psychologist. Although my parents were very worried about my mental state, fortunately, I concealed it very well, and fortunately, my illness would not manifest during the day. It would only strike in the lonely, silent night, as if being thrown into the desolate universe, endless, with no way out. And no one could save me. We appreciate you listening. Please give us a like and subscribe.